Hello and welcome to My Life in a Biscuit Tin from Good Housekeeping. I am Liz Mosley and it's great to be here again with another one of our brave and brilliant guests who are coming to help us answer a very big and important question, which is, in a life filled with stuff and clutter, what really is worth keeping? And we do have lots of brave and brilliant people on this podcast, but today's is arguably one of the bravest and certainly the most brilliant, the heroic Chief International Correspondent of the BBC. It's Lyse Doucet.
Hello.
How are you?
So nice to meet you, Liz, and your great backup team. Yeah, listen, Lyse, we should do
I
a
know.
podcast.
We should do a podcast. Well, we are. We're here to do
Yes.
a podcast. You're obviously back at home at the moment. Is home London?
Yes, I am still Canadian,
Yeah.
and so I still feel Canadian, even though I've lived in Britain for a very long time and worked for a great British institution. But London, I always say London is the centre of the world, and it is where it is my home. Yes.
And obviously your work takes you away at the drop of a hat to all kinds of places, incredible places, frightening places,
Oh, yes.
and the whole mixture of
Yes,
everything.
yes.
I heard you, I think, on the Today programme from the Middle East recently, and then the last time I think you spoke at Good Housekeeping Live a couple of years ago, you just landed from Ukraine. What does the fact of working away in those kinds of environments, what does that mean? How does that change the way you feel about home? What is home to you, the feeling of being there?
I've often said that home is possibly the most powerful word in the English language, because either we want to be at home or to feel at home or to be made to feel at home. And when you listed all of the places that I often spend time in, and there's a whole number of adjectives, including frightening. For me, those are most of the places I go. I'm very fortunate. I feel at home in them because when the BBC says, or when I decide, or we both decide that it's time to go to Kyiv, to Kabul, to Jerusalem, to Amman, to a whole number of places, I don't immediately think of the danger. I think, oh, I'm going to see this friend. Oh, I'm going to go to this cafe. Oh, I'm going to, eat ashak and mantu dumplings in Kabul. Oh, I'm going to have green borscht in Kyiv. Of course, as a journalist, I think about the momentous stories of our time. But it's also because I have a personal connection. They aren't just stories. They're not just work. They are woven for many years into my own personal life. So I travel with a sense of anticipation. I prepare for the risks, but I also look forward to the rewards.
Everyone's home is different, and wouldn't life be boring if they weren't? But whatever your thing is, when it comes to furniture, DFS is here to help you find it, celebrate it, and bring it to life in every room. For me, it's my great big bed, but for you, it could be a bright and beautiful sofa, a snuggly boucle armchair, or a statement storage ottoman. Find your thing in stores or at dfs.co.uk today.
I mean, it's a life I could scarcely imagine. I'm somebody who gets a bit homesick when I go to the seaside for a couple of days, so it's really the other end of the spectrum. But you're from a big family. You were born and grew up in Canada, which, as you said. Are you one of 5 siblings?
Six kids.
Six kids.
I'm the second oldest daughter, so there's
Okay.
3 boys and 3 girls, and I'm the second oldest daughter.
I think one of the things that's going in your tin is connected to one of your sisters.
Yes.
Shall we have a look at your
Yes.
pink, stripy... Well,
Yes.
you tell us, what is it? It's a long...
Yes. It's from Bolivia.
Okay.
So when I left University of Toronto, my sister left York University. I always say, both of us left our small little town on the Atlantic coast of Canada, looking out to the sea. And then we took the train and went to Toronto, the big city in the centre of Canada, looked up to the skyscrapers, and the world opened up to us. I went to University of Toronto. She went to York. So after graduation, she went off to Latin America. She was a development economist at that point. And I wanted to become a journalist. And so I got a volunteer placement with Canadian Crossroads International, which is like VSO. And I worked in a village in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, on the west coast of Africa. So, of course, I had a 4-month assignment with the ticket was paid. And I still remember sitting, I was in in the apartment of someone, as they call apartment flat, of a Canadian diplomat. She allowed me to stay there the night before my flight. And I paced the floor all night because I had no money. I had no experience. I had no job. And should I go back to Canada? There'd been some vague offers. Maybe you could do some work as a journalist. But I realized that this is my chance. I had left Canada. There was a chance to make it as a journalist, back and forth all through the night. And then I think just when dawn broke, my sister had sent me this. And at that point, it was bright, bright pink. And there was something in looking at the bright pink. And I thought, so I often think of it as the bright pink decision. I thought, you have to stay. You have to go with the bright pink. And it's also resonant of my favorite poem, which I've carried with me from the day I started traveling. And the same sister, Andrea, who's now Canada's research chair in gender work and care.
Wow.
She talked about women's work in the home and when men are the main caregivers and the mothers are out working. Anyway, that's another story. So when I made that decision, I also thought of the poem my sister Andrea had given me by Seamus Heaney, which is, the way we are living, timorous or bold, will have been our life. In other words, we worry about little things. Oh, I've got a rip in we all do. Rip in my, oh, should I wear this? Should I wear that? What did I say? Oh my God, I must have looked really terrible. But it's the arc of our life, the big decisions that we make, whether we choose to be timorous or whether are timorous or bold, will have been our life. And so I've tried to be guided by that.
So this piece of fabric, sort of fringed, long,
traditional,
thin,
yes, it's hand woven by women in Bolivia.
Designed to be worn in some way.
Yes.
And did you wear it?
No, I just brought it along with me. Yeah, she had given it to me as a gift. I just had it. Yeah, we used to send each other things when she was in South America and I was in
Are
Africa.
you all really brainy and wise, or you Doucet children?
I don't. No, I think we just are. I bet you and most of the Good Housekeeping readers were like in the first row of the class. Me, miss, I know the answer. Did you do your? Yes, I did my homework. I did. I was a bit naughty for some years, but then I really.
Tell us about the naughtiness.
Really, then and then I applied myself, and then ended up leading my class, but more to the I think we try to do the best we can under the circumstances.
I feel like I want to ask you about your mum and dad, because obviously they've done a great job with you and your brothers and sisters wisely sending thoughtful gifts and sharing poetry and making momentous decisions when you're in your early 20s. There's a photograph of your mum over there. Let's have a look at mum.
I have to say that one of my, when you leave for university, it's when your world opens up, as I said, but you also find out a bit more about the world. And I remember going to university at first. I did my first degree, my bachelor's with honours at Queen's University. And then I was going home for Christmas. And then I was shocked when some people said, no, I'm not going home for Christmas. And I said, why? They said, well, I don't get along with my family. I said, really? And it never occurred to me that someone might not want to spend time with their family. And of course, we do know that not everyone is fortunate. They prefer not to. I mean, we're given our families and we choose our friends. And sometimes we choose to be with friends rather than family. But I was fortunate that I did get along with my family. I think, my parents weren't university educated. My mother was a homemaker. My father worked at he went up to supervisor level at a pulp and paper mill in our, the east coast of Canada's hewers of wood, jars of water. But my mother always said her work was her sewing. And we really marvel. We talked about a little bit how women managed in those times. In my mother's case, 6 children. That was pretty normal, although I know others with 9 and 10. And not just getting us off to school more or less on time, but sewing all our clothes. Like she would sew my jackets, sew my winter coats. And in Canada, they're thick winter coats. And so she would always be sitting at her sewing machine, and we'd come in the door after school. And how did your day go? How did the test go? And there was never any judgment. It was okay as long as you did your best. And I think it takes the pressure off you. You should just do the best you can. And if you fall, you just pick yourself up and you just keep going. And so she would always say, and afterwards when, where all of us went on to university, all 6 children, she would say that this is my work. And she was proud. And I think, I do still think that being a mother, I'm not a mother. I took it. It wasn't in my life choices. And that being a mother is such an important profession. The saddest thing is that we have given it less respect, as if it's not important. That it's not as important as, the classic thing is you go to someone's dinner or you go to a party. What do you do? And to say you're a homemaker or wife, raising strong, confident children is one of the greatest gifts to our society.
Yeah.
And I think I think we are beginning to recognize that caring in the home is important. There's even discussion that women should be paid to be homemakers. So huge respect. And now I think in my generation of journalists, there weren't many women who had children and became foreign correspondents because of its peripatetic nature and unpredictability. But the current generation, they do have children.
Yeah.
And they do manage to juggle it.
Yeah.
Huge respect to them.
Yeah.
It's hard. I would have found it so difficult to go out the door and to say, I'm sorry, I'm leaving for another, and to have your child saying, oh, mommy. But then, there's daddy there too, so daddy can take care of them. So I think now in this generation, much more fathers take equal responsibility and sometimes even more than the mother. So I think these are positive changes in our society's evolution.
As you say, your picture of your lovely mum there sitting at her sewing machine, you've brought the jar of buttons as well.
Don't you love
because
button jars?
Oh, it's unbelievably satisfying.
It's sort of, you look at all the buttons, it's like a treasure, and each you think of what
it was attached to.
I still remember the clothes. I remember what we wore when we were kids. I remember my favorite red dress when I went to high school. I remember my white and my plaid coat that my mother made. And they're full of memories. And so buttons. My grandmother had a button jar. And I think it was in my grandmother's generation because, of course, it was a make, do, and mend. It was during the wars. So you would never throw away a button. And, of course, most of the clothes then, they were sewn. So you had to have buttons. And there's such amazing buttons. In my mother's generation was also buttons. And I remember a friend of mine who did work for the BBC and is also Canadian. We were discussing one time, and then all of a sudden she talked to me how she had gotten a sewing machine. And I go, wow, that's great that you got a sewing machine. And she said, yeah, isn't it terrible that mothers now are not passing on to their daughters how to use a sewing machine, how to sew? And I was stopped in my tracks, and I thought, that sentence kind of summarizes the sort of passages of life between generations now. And I wonder, in Generation C, do their mothers teach their daughters how to sew? I can still remember sitting with my aunt, and she showed me how to thread the needle and how to knot it. And we did home economics at
I did at school too. Yeah.
And I think it's not. I was talking to someone the other day, and they were saying it's been taken off the curriculum. It's
interesting.
And in some schools,
my kids both have done cooking for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And they do sewing, but in the context of a sort of CDT kind of. Sometimes it's woodwork, sometimes it's sewing. It's sort of in the mixture kind of thing.
And I bet now there's this because I'm sure the women took home economics and the men took carpentry. It was very gendered and electrical. And I have no anecdotal or other evidence, but I'm sure now there's more of it's not gender.
What we see at Good Housekeeping, isn't it? We've just done some research that showed you're right. Those skills, the sewing particularly, is declining in younger people. Although there is also this sort of thriving
sewing.
Crafting is very cool again for crochet and knitting and stuff like that.
Knitting. With a lot of men. I don't know. There's two men sitting in our room. I don't know whether either of them are knit one, purl one. They're just laughing. No, I don't know what they're saying.
But the other thing I was going to ask you, we see a lot in Good Housekeeping, generations of women definitely passing down recipes and ways of cooking from one to the other. That's very much so. Are you a good cook? Do you throw something together?
I always say that the food is the most direct passageway to memory. And it's so interesting in my work. For example, if I would speak to someone from, the Syrian cuisine is stunning. And although there's always arguments about which, is Lebanese better than Syrian, but arguably the best cuisine in the Middle East. And now we see a bit of Syria everywhere. But if you'd say to someone from Aleppo, what do you miss? They would say, well, I miss the lemon chicken. What do you miss? People remember the food, and food evokes. So it's always a mix of taste and memory and also food defines so many countries and cultures, and it's a
Cultures, yeah.
celebration of cultures. I keep thinking that I want to do a proper, even do some programs about food. So yes, I love cooking. I used to do a lot of cooking. And I'll just tell you one thing, because a lot of my friends come from different parts of the world, is that, so every culture has their staple. So where I come from in Eastern Canada, it's potatoes,
Yeah.
the Irish connection.
Yeah.
There's many countries, it's rice. For Afghanistan, where I spent a lot of time, it's bread. So when I got back from the Middle East, and I would, think, okay, I'm going to invite, that was when I came back from Pakistan, Afghanistan. I would invite friends, and I think, okay, there's Pakistanis coming, there's Indians coming, or ancestry, and there's Iranians. And of course, the Iranians say that their rice is the best because they do this tahdig, with this crust on the top of it. I was so nervous about it. I would always get someone to make the rice. Like I didn't make the rice. And then one day I stayed at home all day until I perfected, the Iranian way of making rice, which is that you have to soak it overnight. You have to cook it to a certain thing. Then you have to steam it, with a towel on top of it. Then you have to, and then you put a little bit of crisp on the bottom, and then you turn it over so that it's golden crispy on the top. So I practiced all day, and I did it. And then I invited my Iranian and all my friends over, and they were watching kind of. And then I said, I learned how to do it. And there was a pause. They said, oh yeah, but we use rice cookers now.
Oh no! There is something.
Anyway, that was one of my biggest achievements. So I used to do a lot of cooking, but now, unfortunately, I'm traveling a lot. But I'm looking forward to doing more cooking. Because isn't one of the, I don't know what you think, Liz, but you have how many children? Two. So you're cooking, probably cooking. Is one of the greatest gifts to your friends, to your family, is to cook for them. And I still think back to the Bible. Breaking bread around the table is the greatest kind of hospitality. And for all, of course, we love going out to restaurants. And then there was that trend of getting food ordered in. And I have to say that even some friends admitted they would clatter pots and pans in the kitchen, pretending they were cooking. And in the back door,
Scraping it out the trays.
That guy in the back door came the delivery man for that food. I was shocked. I said, "Are you serious? You're admitting it's your." Anyway, no names mentioned.
No name shaming.
But isn't it the great to have time?
It's a joy. It's a real joy. It is.
You have to have a chief chopper, because so many of these recipes are, if you do, because I like to do either, Iranian cuisine or Indian, or there's a lot of chopping. So you have to have time.
Have
to
a
do
sous chef to help with the chopping in the
you have to have
beginning.
someone to help with the
There
chopping.
is something, Lise, there is something so heartwarmingly ironic about you, one of the most sort of famed war correspondents in the world. The thing that you're frightened of is preparing the rice for your Iranian friends. There is something just brilliant about that vision.
This episode of My Life in a Biscuit Tin is brought to you by DFS. Everyone has a thing, and whatever you're looking for in your home, DFS can help you find yours. My thing this week is pumpkins. I didn't know I was going to become a Halloween mom until I became one. Our box of Halloween decorations is actually bigger than our box of Christmas decorations. I think it all started when my mum made me carve a turnip into a Halloween lantern at our dining room table. Imagine my incredulity when I got to my mid-20s and I found out that pumpkins, if you can find one, is already hollow. I will be back at my own dining room table without my teenage children, carving my own pumpkin lantern again this year. If your thing this week is finding an amazing new piece for your home, DFS can help. From sofas and bed frames to sideboards and dining sets. Discover the new season collection now in store or at dfs.co.uk.
Let's put another thing in your tin. Your red piece of fabric there. Tell me about that. So this is a piece of, it's
very
like a
traditional.
scarf.
It's a traditional Afghan fabric.
Yep.
It's guli,
Amazing colour.
with flower, and there is gul is flower. And when I first went to Afghanistan in 1988, which is where a book I've just finished, it just starts.
Yeah.
The taxi driver I first used was a lovely man called Amir Shah, and he was very pious. He would, say his prayers, but he was also very committed to learning English. So he'd have his English books and practicing. He was sometimes could be a bit of a pain, but he was a lovely, lovely driver, and I would trust, to this day, my life with him. He went on then to become an award-winning journalist, but at that point in 1988, he was my driver. and that was during the Cold War. And his lovely mother, Bibi Gul, she gave me this scarf as something to keep me safe. And to this day, I bring it with me. I put it in my suitcase as a reminder. And sadly, I just read before I came to join you that she just passed away.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I was thinking about her. You know, she's a traditional Afghan woman, illiterate, but of course they have great skills, and it's something I explore in my book as well. They develop their own kind of power within the home, their
Yeah.
own kind of superpowers in terms of cooking and just what we've been talking about, cooking and sewing.
Your book, Finest Hotel in Kabul, A People's History of Afghanistan, is it looking at the sort of the shifting lives of particularly the women of Afghanistan, or everybody, or how? Tell us a little bit about the scope of what you've written about.
So to make a long story short, I've always been fascinated by it. In the 1780s, it used to be called the New Journalism. Began with Truman Capote, who wrote or he was one of the first people in Cold Blood, which is you use the conventions of the novel to try to tell real life stories. So using techniques of fiction to apply to nonfiction. And now I think it's called narrative history or creative or and the first, whenever I would travel to a new part of the world, I would read novels because I felt that was the best way to get under the skin of a country. And I've never had time to do a book. People would say, "Oh, Lise, why don't you write a book?" And I'd say, "Listen, I can't even finish emails. How can I finish a book?" But I think it came at a time where we're all very conscious now as journalists that there's this thing called news avoidance.
Yes.
That people, including myself, I'm not sure if it's you as well, oh, the news is so negative. Oh, it sort of makes me depressed. Oh, it's so glum. You know, I even sometimes go to Radio 3 classical music rather than Radio 4.
There are weeks sometimes when I really can't
take
engage.
it. Yes, can't take it. But of course we have to because it's part of our responsibility
sure.
as a city. Because as a citizen, they're not those stories, as my aunt used to say. Why are you going to those countries? They're our stories too, because many of the conflicts, our own governments are involved. People go back and forth. So I wanted to find a way. I wanted to find, as they say in literature, a conceit to be able to tell a story about Afghanistan, which explores the spaces in between the images that we often see on our TV screen or hear about or read about. Often when you hear reports of war zones, it's people running away from fire, it's people in hospitals, it's people wailing, it's sadness, it's violence. But people lives get on. When I would say to people, "Oh, Afghans have a great sense of humor," they'd say, "Really?" Of course, it's black humor. So I tried to find a conceit, and I had stayed at the Intercontinental Hotel in all the different periods. Except for one, in all the different periods of Afghan history, which in all the different periods means different chapters of war. And I kept in touch with some of the staff, and the fact that they, for decades they kept their pride in being a proper waiter, because some of them had been trained by the luxury Intercontinental chain in the 60s and 70s when Afghanistan was a kingdom.
Yeah.
It was regarded as the Paris of Central Asia. The Intercontinental Kabul had escargot and cocktails on the roof. They had bikinis by the swimming pool. It was a very, the Afghans now call it the golden years. So I used it as a prism to tell. So it's done through the lives of people who have worked at the hotel, some of them for nearly 50 years, from 1969 to present day. And of course now the hotel is run by Taliban again.
Yeah.
And so by using some of the conventions of a novel to try to tell a story of a people in an effort to, I always see my work as trying to narrow the gap between, to use the term of the us and them, the otherness of it.
Yes.
And among my early readers, so I gave it to my sister Andrea, who's a research chair in gender work and care. And I gave it to my sister Paula, who's a school principal who just retired. She's my younger sister, but she's now left, and she never reads nonfiction. And I wanted to see these were two different kinds of readers. And of course, we love each other, so they go. And both of them, and I wanted to, first of all, I said, do the Margaret Atwood test. Read 5 pages and tell me if you want to read more. And tell me, especially to both of them, is the war stuff too much? Are the characters. Both of them finished it. And my sister Paula although she said, "Oh, I didn't know anything about the Cold War." She loved Abida, who was the first female chef at the Intercontinental. And I described the kind of food that she makes, what kind of ingredients, the care, I called it, her hands are her superpower. And also she's illiterate, so she tells her stories in the sewing, in the kamak, in the embroidery from Kandahar in the south.
Yes.
And my sister Andrea, who's a research scholar, she looked at different things. But both of them finished the book, but both of them found something different in the book. And Salman Rushdie, I went to a lecture of his now, which or a public address, which are so rare now after
Yes,
he was
he's
knifed.
so poorly, yeah.
Yes, because he lost his eye,
yeah.
and when he was attacked on stage, so he rarely appears in public. But he did at the Hay Festival. It was mesmerizing, and you felt wow in the presence of genius. But he talked about how he's experimenting with different things, and he talked about using narrative nonfiction to tell journalistic stories. And he talks about the characters, come alive on the page. And that's what I've tried to do, that even if people don't know much about Afghanistan, don't want to know much about them, that they will find in these characters something they can recognize. Because I've often said, and I've been saying this for many years about my work, that no matter how complex and consequential the story, and you don't get more complex and consequential than Syria, than Afghanistan, Ukraine, if you drill down, what is the story about? The story is about mothers and fathers and children and homes and streets and societies. It always comes back to those elements of society. And that's how you can draw people in, and that's how you can make people care. And that's how you can, my sister Paula would say, "Lise, what should I know about Syria?" And I would tell her stories about the people of Syria, the children. I did a documentary for the BBC about the children of Syria and the bravery of the children of Syria, who had been through horrific circumstances, but still managed not just to, they lived through these terrible events. They survived, kept themselves intact, and were able to articulate and tell their stories themselves. So I didn't go to the mother or the auntie or the grandmother or the father to tell the story. The children told their stories. So it's that looking through that lens of trying to keep people reading, but also to appreciate just what people, because wars are not just about the bomb, the bombs exploding, the bullets whistling. Wars are also about when you see the mother's anxious eyes when her children leave for school because she's not sure they're going to come back. Wars are also about having, organizing your wedding day and hoping against hope that the wedding is not going to be shattered by bombs. It's like these everyday courage. And, to go back to how you started, you talk about, oh, Lise, you go to frightening places. I always say that all of us have within us an everyday kind of courage. Even things like getting up in the morning, facing the day. Even sometimes I find it terrifying. I asked one of my sisters, "Oh, could you call the mayor for me? I don't want to make that telephone call." Or I'm so scared to make that. My sister Paula will go and make the telephone call. My mother will march down the street to the mayor's office. Everyone has within them. And I know it's not the same. They say, "These, for God's sake, you're going to places." No. I would say, because what is courage? It's something that comes from within. And so it's less. It is about the circumstances outside. It's that we all find within ourselves this courage. And all of these characters in this book, I admire them so much. Sadozai, who 30 years on is still driving a bicycle to work in a country where sadly there had been so much corruption, and where the housekeeper who's 72 years old still, this is the way you do things, this is how, still keeping that sense of that dignity, that pride, and being the 5 standards hotel, this is how we do things. So I wanted to share what I admired about them, and to hope that the readers, and it's up for them to decide, that they would find a little bit of that too.
I'm really struck listening to you. Your choice of language, as you would expect, being the job that you do, is very particular and very evocative. You talk about everyday courage and dignity, but there's a thread running through it, and even in your energy, that family. Your own.
Yeah.
You sent your book to your sisters. You trusted that they would be honest with you.
Yes.
This vision of, you don't want to call the mayor, but Paula will do it, you know, and then everybody else's families, families with people we don't know. Talk to me about,
you're kind of the framework around you. You go off and do these incredible things and see and witness and observe the world writ large and in small ways at the same time. And your job is to draw those things together, as you say. But in your world, in Lee's world, there's a structure of all sorts of people who look after you and keep you going. And when you think, oh, I just don't want to.
Yeah.
Are there days when you think, oh, I just don't want to go?
Yeah, there's days like, I've now cancelled my trip home to the east coast of Canada. This is the third time, and now Air Canada's on strike. So
No, not again.
Someone doesn't want me to go home, and I think everyone has their own reality. As I said, for some people. Some people, it's the friends that they choose to rely on. And, and some will, and I think in our time, people are realizing that women, like sisterly friends, can be as important as your marriage partner or your family. And they also say that, it's not just one person in your life, that we have different people in our lives who are important to us in different ways. And I feel the solidarity and the love of so many friends in so many places. And for me, my family is my anchor, because no matter what happens, I can go home. And I have a home on the east coast of Canada. Like we live on a bay, the Baie de Château, the Bay of Heat, which even though it's minus 30,
Even though it's cold,
we by minus 30 in the winter, and the snow goes up to the roof. And I don't have to apologize for anything. That is my hometown.
Yeah.
I have a little place there. All my early memories are all there. My family has been there for generations, and I do. That is my. That's my North Star, and it's on the water. And some people are mountain people. Some people, I'm a water person. In fact, when I first went to Africa, on the west coast of Africa, I sat on the beach on the Atlantic Ocean, and I thought on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean is my other home. That immensity of how the world can seem so small, even across the vast ocean. So I am privileged to have that anchor, that my family does get along. We take care of each other. And, there have been moments where we have had to pull together. And I feel it is a gift, and I feel very fortunate. But I don't want to, in case, some people are listening, people create their families, or they love the family that they were given to by birth, or however you look at the world, your destiny, your fate, whatever. But for me, it is part of my it is my my belt and braces.
And in your little white box, there's more family treasures inside there. Let's have a little look at that.
Yes.
So this is a beautiful little. What's it made from?
It's marble. Yes, marble. Yes,
engraved on the top.
Yes. See, this is sort of mother of pearl,
inlaid with floral pattern,
and this lovely kind of grid. And
if you hadn't already told me where it's from, I probably would have guessed, because this is very much of the style of, and you got it in
India. In India, I bought it at the Taj Mahal, and the Taj, faith, hope, and love, and the greatest of all is love. So the Taj Mahal, the Emperor Shah Jahan built the Taj Mahal, it said, for his favorite wife.
Always got to be the favorite of the wives.
The favorite, yes. And so it's always meant to be. So it's a symbol of love. But I also love the Taj Mahal and those majestic buildings of times past, because in centuries past, the master craftsmen, and they were men, they would always make a deliberate mistake. So if you look at Persian miniatures, there's like a foot going the wrong way, the right foot is going left, and one hand is going the wrong way, because they believe that only God is perfect, only God achieves perfection. So they should always make a deliberate mistake to underline their humanity. And I use this now, in which if we're going on trips, if I don't know whether all our Good Housekeeping our readers and viewers, they if you travel, you forget one thing, whether it's your toothpaste or your brush or your charger or something. So I always say only God is perfect. You can forget one thing, but if you forget two or three things, then that's just stupidity and bad organizing. So I have this on my bedside table, and I do have inside it that little poems and prayers. My grandmother Huzzy was she used to play the piano. So this is my mother sent it to me, and she said Nanny's prayer. Nanny would sit at her piano and sing this prayer every night. My grandmother.
So is that your mum's handwriting?
Yes.
Sweet.
Friend of Nanny, and then this is and then my mother sent me a poem as well. She said a friend gave me this. I thought I would share it with you, and it's all about living in the moment, not looking at the future. when you live in the future with its problems and fears, it is hard. I'm not there. My name is not. I will be. You have to live in this moment.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was regretting the past and fearing the future. I just keep, they're like little keepsakes, and I just put, it's again, all around, it's a symbol of love, but also of our, kind of shared humanity. And it's quite beautiful, isn't it?
It's a really pretty thing.
It's
really pretty thing.
I don't know whether I could fit a biscuit in there. But
No. One of these little bits. You know what? We should have a little biscuit.
I mean,
These
I'm-
are
yes.
Nan's crunchy oat biscuit breaks, but gluten-free, I believe.
Yes,
So
I
we're
do
going
try.
to. It's so semi-healthy. Well, it's quite healthy actually. I'm going to have a go. I'll go and see what that's like.
Probably.
I do like a Nan's actually.
Very nice.
No, they're not very nice. I think it would be a good dunker. I'm gonna
nice,
go in.
I love your mugs.
They're pretty nice, aren't they? Emma Bridgewater. That's very nice, fruity. Your life is really full. I can see there's a sort of huge amount of gratitude and your faith very present and all of that. Have there been
Sacrifices, regrets along the way, things that you sort of think, oh, if I had my time over again, I might do that differently?
My wish is to live a life without major regrets, and for the most part, I feel that for me the wish has come true. I don't have major regrets. There are those moments in life where you have to make decisions. Like there were decisions about very strong relationships, and they could have gone either way.
Yeah.
Decisions whether to marry someone or not marry someone, and it was, in the number of the cases where it happened, when I was younger and when I was older, I think in retrospect the right decision was made. Everyone has to choose their paths. So I'm fortunate in saying I savor the memories of all the great periods in my life, my personal relationships, my professional choices, and that I'm still fortunate to say I don't have a major regret that I didn't that sliding doors, that I chose this moment rather than that moment. So
And your work fulfills you hugely.
well, because it's not work. Even
No.
there's this tribe kind of, even among in the BBC, it's a strange kind of thing where when you're together, you're such a close knit. It's
Yeah.
like becomes like your family.
Yeah, I can see
And
that.
it's the most wonderful thing because you really have to. It's like a well-oiled machine. That you all have to work together. Everyone knows what they're going to do. And I always say that when you're working with people, whether it's in my case, because I do TV, there's a producer and a camera person, and then there's a person who's from the country. So if we work in Syria, we work with a Syrian. If we work in Afghanistan, we work with an Afghan. If we work in Palestine, we work with a Palestinian. So they're part of our team, and the driver's always part of that team because drivers can, and I've seen it, can make the difference really between life and death sometimes on really dangerous roads. And they become family. And if you are confident they're going to do your job, then you can laugh.
Yeah.
You can have a lark because they're going to do the job. But when you're kind of worried, you're thinking, oh, they're not that organized or they're not paying attention. It's all about detail, isn't it? Journalism is about the arc of sweeping ideas and decisions, but there are also little minutiae of you have to be here then, organizing this time, that time, deadlines.
Yeah.
And some people are just naturally good at them. And those, I always say there's a great injustice in journalism that the voice or the face gets all the credit. But the reality is that producers are the gold dust. And BBC has, and other broadcasters as well, but I'll speak about my own. They are amazing. And, look at the great team behind us today. They make us, without them, it wouldn't happen.
Yeah.
And I think this is why I think that, everyone should get the credit.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a question, well, you can't put all their names in, there's not enough space. But I think just recognizing that we only are who we are because of all the hands and all the minds coming together. And I'm such a big believer in blue sky thinking. You're trying to wrestle with something. I sit down with my colleagues, what do you think we should do? And you always come up with something. There's something about letting the ideas float up there into the blue sky, and the skies are opening and they're full of ideas, and you somehow the birds fly with some kind of a solution.
Yeah.
And because I always think, why do this work? And it applies to anything unless you enjoy it.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend your time complaining and backstabbing, and it also applies to my colleagues like Lindsay Hilsum, who's Channel 4's international editor, is a very good friend. We share lots of stuff about what we're doing, what we're planning to do. My editors might say, "Lee, she's your competitor." No,
In it together.
yeah, especially in places which are dangerous.
For sure.
Better to work together,
With
and
people you love.
it's the thing about journal. Anyway,
We've got time for one more thing to go in the tin. So who should we go for?
Yes.
We're going to go for the fox.
I know. Somebody say, "What?
Furry
The
fox.
The foxes are, they've eaten. They're terrorizing our neighborhood." But I like the fox. I think foxes are clever. You said earlier when
Wily.
Wily.
Yeah.
And this fox is from a very special place. It's called Bolivian, which is a beautiful historic hotel
Yes.
in Lausanne, which is a beautiful city in Switzerland. It was a hotel where Coco Chanel and French philosophers went and lived there. It's full of history, but it was also the venue in 2015 for the multilateral Iran negotiations on Iran's nuclear deal. So the Brits, the Germans, the French, the EU, the Americans, the Iranians were there, and we were all there as journalists. We went.
Did you get to stay in the posh hotel?
No, we weren't allowed to.
Oh,
we weren't allowed
disappointing.
to. But I did. But after the delegates all left, I went and wandered around the hotel.
Good, quite right.
So stunning. And I do occasionally check to see when the prices come down, and they never do.
Uh-huh.
But I keep this out because it just reminds me that it was that moment of major world powers coming together with Iran, and through the power of negotiations, of finding ways to somehow to meld the different interests. And of course, negotiations, mediation is also about compromises, to come up with a nuclear deal, which was a landmark international deal to control the spread of the proliferation of nuclear weapons in exchange for sanctions relief. It wasn't perfect. The deals are never perfect. As they say, don't trust, verify. And to have been there at that moment and the excitement in the international community, and I know it was interesting at the time too, the European Union delegation was all women.
Oh, how fascinating.
All women. And
I didn't know that.
The top negotiators, I still see them now, and Helga and Miss Mogherini, and they were like, they gave so much of their lives to getting that deal, and then President Trump pulled out of it in his first term, and the rest is history. But I'm focusing on it as a way, because now we live in a time of, we call them forever wars without end, because there are so many different players now, everyone with their own interests, that countries like Sudan, like Libya, like Iraq, are literally being torn apart, and the rules of war, because even wars have rules. The Geneva Conventions are being violated on an industrial scale, and I just think, when is the power of mediation going to be able to exercise it? And because I spend quite a bit of my time in war zones, although I don't call myself a war correspondent, I also spend a lot of time with mediators, like the world's top mediators. I go to mediation forums, off-the-record ones. Of course, I can't cross the line because I work for the BBC, but I'm allowed to go and moderate and listen to them. And, in mediation, they always say that there's 500 days of failure in one day of success. So the one day of success is when the fox comes out.
And the fox serves as a reminder from that great agreement that progress is possible, it can work.
Yeah, it just reminds me too of the... he's just a kind of a cute little fella, but he reminds me, in this historic hotel, because, I mainly work in the, middle, in the global south, if you like to call it. But when I was covering the Iran nuclear deal, I went to Vienna, to Geneva, to Lausanne, to Montreux, to lots of places. In these grand historic hotels. And, back to my book, the hotels are full of history. History is within the walls, in the floors. It sits in the room with you, and you feel that history. There's the photographs on the wall. So we all love historic hotels. And when you're there, when history is being made in our time, it's one of the biggest privileges of being a journalist. And I say, it's not that you're in the margins watching the history. You are smack in the middle, in the heat and the dust, with the people making history. And it's an extraordinary privilege, but also a great responsibility to try to get it right.
That sounds like an amazing place to close our conversation, Liz. We could sit here and chat forever.
Yeah.
I do think that I'm going to take away, one, you need a rice cooker. We'll sort you out. We're Good Housekeeping. We can make that happen for you. I'd love to be able to send you on a press trip to the posh hotel in Lucerne. So if we ever get the nod from the PR that represents it, we know who to call. Lyse Doucet, thank you so much for sharing with me what's in your biscuit tin. That's it for today. If you've enjoyed this conversation, then you will love Good Housekeeping Live. It's in the middle of November in London, and you can book your tickets now at goodhousekeepinglive.co.uk. I hope to see you there. Thanks so much.
Maybe it's a sofa that gives you that heavenly sinking in feeling. Maybe it's an extendable dining table for everyone to crowd around and catch up. Or maybe it's a sideboard to hide all of that clutter that's been driving you crazy. Whatever your home has been missing, you can find it at DFS. With thousands of stylish pieces to discover, find your thing today in stores or at dfs.co.uk.